That's really a sincerely great pleasure to be here. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Arda, certainly, and also this group of wonderful students who's been welcoming us. I say us probably all the time, just invited, but also I came with my wife and we're having a very good time in Istanbul. It's my second visit in Istanbul. The first one was about 7 years ago, and also for scientific reasons. And I had a chance to visit some place. So Istanbul is really also a wonderful city. And I've just started with an example of this incredible architecture that is so beautiful. So thanks to the presentation of this morning, you had already got some insight into muscle cells and muscle biology. One with a presentation about the making of meat, because meat will be made from cells that can form muscle. And the other one, from just before me, concerning stem cells. And what I'm going to talk about to you today is try to give you some keys about the biology of skeletal muscle stem cells and skeletal muscle itself. So I would start and point, say, the major points that I would like to develop today, which concern the stem cells of skeletal muscle. This means that skeletal muscle has stem cells, and these cells are known as satellite cells, and they are extremely important for muscle repair. And I will try to give you, say, a view of this particular cell system through the study of muscle regulatory genes, which are absolutely critical for the functioning of these muscle stem cells. When I say functioning, it is, you will see, very important for a cell to acquire identity. So in the course of embryonic development, you will see that cells must adopt fate, and in this case it will be the muscle fate, and this happens through a particular mechanism and requires the expression of a series of genes which are regulatory genes. And these genes, I will try to say a few words about these muscle regulatory factors, genes MyoD, MIP5, myogenin, and MRF4. They are transcription factors. I will speak also of these 10 box containing genes, which are also transcription factors. They're called PAX7 and PAX3. And I will finish with genes that we are also studying more particularly in this last day, which are PITX genes. Again, these are transcription factors, which are, we think, very important for the biology of muscle stem cells and skeletal muscle in general. So, complex situation. I'm not going to comment. This is just a scheme. I mean, you all know your skeletal muscle. I mean, we use them for walking, for moving and carrying things, and then we have muscles, skeletal muscles all over our body. And as mentioned this morning, these muscles are formed by the fusion of mononucleate cells that one sees here, and they're called myoblasts. And we will speak of the particular state of these myoblasts, which is the satellite cell state. And these cells form fibers by fusing, and these fibers are going to become the site of the synthesis of the actomyosin and sarcomeres, which are the protein, the assembly of protein, organization of protein illustrated here, which are absolutely required for muscle contraction. Initially, and I'm going to try to provide an image of what myogenic cells are. Myogenesis was mostly studied through the use of culture cells. And this is a static view of myogenic cells in a growing phase. this is like a colony of muscle cells that has not yet differentiated. And these cells, under particular conditions, can differentiate and form what is called myotubes. I cannot remember your name, but you mentioned the myotubes this morning, so I was referring to your presentation too. So these are, say, a representation of what could be a muscle fiber in vivo. Okay. And I just wanted, before continuing, give you, say, a more dynamic view of what these myoblasts can do. And then we will come back to the point that I wanted to make that concerns the regulation of myogenesis. So just going through quickly still, I hope that we will be able to see. Okay. I'm going to go like this. Yeah. So these are the cells that we will see we've been working with, and these are the progeny of satellite cells that we can work with quite routinely in culture. And this is the culture, a picture of the culture 2 days after plating, and we've been plated cells on this is 2D cultures, not 3D cultures. We are not. The goal here is not to make the maximum of protein, like was described this morning. The goal is to follow the cells and study their behavior. And if one looks at the behavior of these cells, one sees first that they are quite motile, and that under the conditions they're cultured, they divide quite actively. Mitosis are very numerous. But there is just another point that I wanted to illustrate for you here. That is the fusion process, because these cells are myogenic cells, and we have told you that the fibers are formed by the fusion of the myoblasts. These are now myoblasts because they are, say, descendant progeny of satellite cells. So I'm going to accelerate a bit the film so that we can reach the point where cells will begin to fuse. Maybe some fusion starts to be detectable on top of the, like here, large cell that is forming, but I'm going to stop everything and then go back, just for you to see the fusion of. So we have, too bad, probably the cells contributing to this fiber that is forming. We know it's a fiber because it already contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 nuclei. So it's the result of the association of 7 cells, and then there is a cell that is now coming and going to establish a contact with the growing fiber, and this contact is going to happen here if you focus on this starter. And one sees that at this point, I mean, the membranes probably have been fused, and that the process is going to continue, so that the cell is going to integrate, and the nucleus is going to join the group now here. So that is the fusion process that leads to the formation of muscle fiber. It's not, I mean, it's just an expression of probably what is happening in vivo. So this type of I'm not going to go to the end of this film because it's not going to tell us much more, except that our culture conditions are probably not as good as yours, because what happens usually is that after 4 or 5 days in culture, these huge fibers will detach, come off, float, and die. So this is not good for me. So I'm just stopping the film now, and going back to the show. And back to the slide. And then just for a point, this is a point back to basic biology, and the questions we were addressing, we are still addressing in some way, when dealing with this type of model, I mean, which has been the most popular model for studying biogenesis before we could do more in vivo studies. And there was a very important question, and I think it's for me it's very important to point this to you. That is, this model was extremely fascinating for molecular biologists in the 70s and 80s, because between this state and this state there is the activation of hundreds of genes. So that was a fascinating situation where this cell is undifferentiated and this cell is fully differentiated. And I'm just mentioning some of these genes, which are muscle actin, myosin, tropomyosin, cholinergic receptor for transmission of the nervous influx, creatine phosphokinase, dystrophin, and I could, give you a list of hundreds of these genes that are turned on when cells go from the mononucleated state to the fused state. So that is absolutely exciting situation, that is to understand the coordinate activation of this myogenic program. So hypotheses were, there was one in the field at this point, and I'm going back to the 70s, 80s. One very interesting hypothesis was that all these genes are turned on at the same time, this myosin, tropomyosin, and so on. Therefore, there must be a master switch, a gene, a central gene that is going to turn on, like if you're going to light up all the rooms in the house at the same time by pressing one button. It was this situation. And the reason for, there were experimental data supporting this proposition. That was, first of all, one cell line, embryonic mesenchymal cell called embryonic mesenchymal cell 10T and a half. Very interesting cell line that, when treated with DNA hypomethylating agent, was turning into adipocytes, chondroblasts, cartilage cells. I say this because I have a knee problem. And myoblasts for muscle. And the frequency of this conversion was incredibly high, such that about 20% of the cells after 5-azacitidine treatment, which is the hypomethylating agent used in these experiments, 20 to 25% of the cells could become myogenic. This means that a small number of genes must be involved in this, maybe one, maybe two, according to statistical considerations. Another very interesting experiment in the field was an experiment made by the group of Helen Blau, and where they generated heterokaryons. So heterokaryons is mixing two nucleus and in a cell. So you force fusion between cells, and the cells in this case were, on one hand, human cells, non-muscle cells, so no expression of muscle genes, and mouse cells, myogenic, so able to express muscle genes. And obviously, we have the tool to detect expression of the human genes, human muscle genes, and to distinguish it from the mouse muscle gene. And in this case, it was a specific myosin antibody directed against a human myosin. So it was a very, I find, a beautiful experiment where, in fact, the result was such that putting a mouse muscle nucleus together with a human non-muscle nucleus together in one cytoplasm, say, or in one cell, one gets the activation of human muscle genes that one can detect with an appropriate antibody that only detects the human myosin. Therefore, that means that there is transacting activity going from the mouse nucleus and acting on the human. So there was a fundamental observation in the field to support the notion of master switch again. And nobody could understand, at this time, we were reaching the point where sequencing was becoming routine, and therefore, some people said, okay, we don't understand how all these genes are coordinated. Therefore, by sequencing, systematic sequencing, we are going to find cis regulatory elements that we explain. how and where the binding of a particular transcription factor will occur. So that was one way to go. Unfortunately, this didn't work. I mean, looking at the sequences, the DNA sequences, was not that convincing and did not reveal particular regulatory elements that would explain the coordinated expression of so many genes together. So the master switch search continued with also another beautiful experiment that consisted in transfection of genomic DNA of differentiating muscle cells into non-muscle cells. And this provoked the appearance in the culture of myogenic colonies. Here again, that means some cells have received some genetic information that is active and that they can deal with, and that leads to the expression of the myogenic program. So this, again, was an argument in favor of the existence of the master switch. So the series of studies, mostly based on subtractive at this time, cDNA hybridization, led to the isolation of 4 genes that I mentioned at the beginning, which are MyoD, myogenin, and then MID5 and MRF4. They received their name as muscle regulatory factors. At this time, they were also called muscle determination genes. Everybody wanted his gene or her gene to be the one that was going on top of the hierarchy, like the MyoD was above all the genes at this time, because it had been discovered in the laboratory of Harold Weintraub, and Harold Weintraub was quite convinced that this was the muscle determination gene, although he was wrong. So, yes, a very easy functional test, transfection of any of this cDNA into embryonic cells, or fibroblasts, say, activates the myogenic program. Therefore, well, the situation seems simple. Still, I would like you to, when you look at this proposition and this experiment, everyone in the room could do it today. We give you a cultural fibroblast, we give you a cDNA, you do the transfection, and within a few days, you isolate myogenic colonies. This is, I would like you to think of this experiment in the context of what is considered today as reprogramming of embryonic cells, as was discussed before. And because this was some kind of reprogramming. Anyway, so I'm going to get into some embryogenesis, and then just mention a few facts and a few things. Just what is this is the axis of the embryo, and what is schematized here is the neural tube, this big thing in the center, and here on the side of the neural tube, and it is the same on the other side, but we only have one view here, is what is called the presomatic paraxial mesoderm. And this is the tissue that is going to give rise to somites. And somites are very important. Well, any part of the embryo is very important, but somites are very important for muscles because this is in somites that the first myogenic cells in the development will appear. Therefore, one thing that was very rapidly studied was, are these muscle regulatory factors that were isolated by the tissue culture approach, are these muscle regulatory factors expressed in the right place and at the right time? And I'm just going to give an example of this with the knock-in of the MID5 gene, where the knock-in means that after genetic manipulation, the gene has been deleted, part of the coding sequence has been deleted, and in place was inserted a reporter gene, which is the beta-galactosidase encoding gene in this case. Therefore, expression of the reporter gene can be followed at all stages of expression of the endogenous gene MID5. And one sees that there is very early expression at embryonic day 8.5. These are mice, of course. and once this in somites expression of MID5, that will continue when all the somites are labeled, and plus, in addition to somites, one sees the forelin at L and hindlin, which are forming at this point, which also express. And then at later stages, most of the muscles are expressing the reporter gene, indicating that these muscle regulatory factors, I'm using this view to tell you that these muscle regulatory factors were following the right, say, expected group that is, yes, expressed at the right time in the right place. So obviously, at this point, myogenic studies, genetic studies were performed, and at this point they consisted in invalidation experiments, which is knockout or knock-in. So knock-in of MID5, there is a phenotype, but today there is no phenotype to say, because it's simple. There is a slight phenotype, so no phenotype. Myoblast form, muscle fiber form, muscle form. Myopia knockout, the same. Myoblast and myotubes and fibers therefore form. But the double knockout MID5 myopia, muscle don't form. This is, a situation of redundancy that was explained and studied more carefully later, where these two genes, MID5 and MyoD, are, say, contributing to the same function in the early stage of myogenesis and permit the formation of myogenic cells. And another interesting situation is provided by myogenin. Myogenin knockout myoblast form, but muscle fibers don't form. So that points to the fact that myogenin was going to contribute to the, say, differentiation rather than determination state, since the progenitors are present, but they don't differentiate correctly. So that was a lot of information, and this is just to give you an overview of the structure of this muscle regulatory factors. They are not strictly identical, but they look very much the same. They bind to an E-box. They are considered as basic helix, loop helix factors, transcription factors. This is for formation of heterodimers between, or homodimer actually also, dimers between these factors. And there is a basic DNA binding domain present and transactivation domain that is illustrated here. So that is a group of factors. This is we're reaching the end of the middle of the 90s with these observations, with the first beginning of a regulatory say pathway leading to myogenesis with myogenic 5 and MYO4 on top. Myogenin playing a critical role for differentiation, and being rather more like a differentiation gene rather than, as I said earlier, determination gene, and myogenic 5 more determination gene. Another player came in the field, and I'm going to go quickly raise the question of the PAX family PAX homeodomain transcription factors. Two of them, PAX3 and PAX7, were shown to be expressed in embryos and involved in the development of skeletal muscle. And I'm quickly summarizing the phenotypes with PAX7 deficient mice showing a very marked phenotype, which is absence or lack or severe reduction of satellite cells. So a critical cell type that is required for muscle regeneration in the adult is absent from the mice lacking PAX7. PAX3, the phenotype is even more, a phenotype occurs is detectable much earlier in development, which is in the PAX3 deficient mice, limb muscle will be absent. There will be no muscle in the limbs. And finally, the explanation came, and the reason is that the cells that form in what we have shown as the somite, which is this segmented structure, the cells, and that is where the myogenic progenitors will appear, the cells that form in this somoid will not migrate to the limb in the PAX3 deficient mice. There will be no migration of the muscle progenitor cells in the case of the deficiency in PAX3. So it's a migration problem rather than a determination problem that is occurring here. And that we might eventually come back to this point, but this is a very interesting also observation that was at the origin of a lot of studies and that were very, very, very useful. The double mutant, PAX3, PAX7, no progenitor, situation is simple. So probably these genes are acting upstream of the MRF, myogenin, myod family that I was talking about before, and are playing a critical role for, say, the specification, what we see as the specification of the muscle lineage in the course of development. And this is, I'm afraid, not to have enough time to be honest, and I may not go through the description of all the results I'm presenting here. What I'm just wanted to do is to show you that what is called as the dermomyosome, which is the upper part of the somite here. Dermomyosome is mostly a site of expression of FAX gene, which is illustrated with FAX3 here, with a particular expression at both ends, what we call the lips of the dermomyosome. And that the cells that are present here are migrating from the dermomyosome to the myosome, where MID5 or myod will be expressed, and this is the green part, and where the muscle, the first embryonic muscle, will form. So this is very important. And probably we are now in front of, we know it now, but we are in front of a situation where we have the FAX genes acting upstream of the MRF genes in the myogenic lineage to contribute to muscle development. And that is to reach the adult stage. Just a quick view of late embryos. We are here in embryos of 16 and 17.5 days, so just an 18.5, which is the end of embryonic life for mice, and where one is going to see the appearance of cells that we're going to call, and I will go back to this point very quickly in the next slide, what we are going to call the satellite cells. We have two actors at this point that we're going to discuss. The fiber itself, differentiation has occurred, and the cells around that were named satellite cells after the discovery 52 years ago. The discovery of these cells. This is a scanning electron microscopy image of a fiber. One can see some cross-relation, and of a cell that is mononucleated and that seems to rest along the fibers in adult muscle. And since they are located at the periphery of the fibers, they were called satellite cells by Alexander Mao, who described them for the first time years ago. And I like the style of this guy, just to make a point. And these cells have not been reported previously, I say, maybe very modest. And indeed might be of interest, I like it, to students of muscle histology, and furthermore, as we shall suggest, might be pertinent to the vexing problem of skeletal muscle regeneration. Because skeletal muscle regenerates, but nobody could explain how exactly and why, because these cells were not. So the idea was simply that these cells were at the origin. So we went back of this regenerative capacity. We went back to our PAX3 GFP knocking mice that we had generated in the lab, and that were very useful for us for the study of embryonic development and the contribution of FAX genes to this process. And we were not expecting particularly that PAX3 was going to be, and through the expression of the reporter, because we are here with the PAX3 GFP knocking mice, the GFP is the green fluorescent protein that is the reporter in this case. And in some places, in adult muscles, we could detect the presence of green nuclei in cells that were in satellite position. So that was quite provocative. So it did not take much time for us to go to study these cells. Of course, they were isolated after enzymatic dissociation of the muscles, and looked at more carefully. Flow cytometry was very useful in this study because of the GFP expression. And as you see, one can isolate directly from the tissue to the fact the population of GFP positive cells. You can ask lots of questions to these cells: surface marker expression, size, granularity, lots of properties, and also functional studies. You can put them back into culture. And I asked them, are you myogenic? If you're myogenic, you must express PAX7. The answer is yes. Myelin, the answer is yes. If you're myogenic, you must be able to contribute to muscle regeneration ex vivo or in vivo. And in vivo is much more exciting and interesting. This is what we did. And we used a model of dystrophic mice, which is Duchenne dystrophy model of MDX mice. These mice are missing dystrophin, and dystrophin is a structural protein that is absolutely required for the stability of the fibers. And when dystrophin is missing in humans, unfortunately, this is absolutely a very it's terrible disease that will kill the patient between the age of 15 and 20, because their fibers will constantly degenerate. The cells, satellite cells, the stem cells will try to compensate the loss of fibers, but at some point the system will become exhausted, and the fibers will no longer be formed, and the patient will die. So the mouse model is much, displays a much weaker phenotype, but is missing dystrophin. Sometimes one can see in the mutant muscle revertant fiber that is expressing dystrophin, because in the case of mice, the mice we are working with, it's a point mutation that can be sometimes reversed. So this is why sometimes one sees a dystrophin positive fiber. But this is the grafted muscle of the dystrophin deficient mice, and one sees that the cells that we grafted after direct flow cytometry isolation have the capacity to restore very efficiently the expression of dystrophin. So it was a very interesting observation, and also a functional characterization of the cells that we were able to isolate by this technique. We also looked at the grafted muscles and went back and re-isolated grafted cells. The question was, the cells contribute to the differentiated phenotype that is very satisfying. And do they also contribute to the satellite cell compartment? In other words, are they going to contribute to the reservoir that is responsible for the constant capacity of skeletal muscle to be able to regenerate all along life? So we, first of all, re-isolated GFP positive cells from grafted muscle, therefore MDX mice, and could isolate population of cells. These cells are still myogenic, they can differentiate. And when we looked more closer at the fibers of this grafted muscle, we could see cells outside the fiber, around the fiber, in satellite cell position, that were expressing the marker, which is GFP, which is the sign of the donor cells, since they were isolated from a GFP expressing line. So these two features that I just described, and this is the only slide in French that I have here. This is stem cells, cellules souches, muscle stem cells. So are able to undergo self-renewal, auto-renouvellement, to contribute to their own formation and maintenance all along life, and also they are able to differentiate from new fibers. So that would be the minimum definition for what you described before as a monopotent tissue-specific stem cell that is self-renewal and differentiation. But as you see, and I guess you're now convinced, these cells belong already, have adopted fate, which is the myogenic fate, because they belong to the muscle lineage, and they are not going to be used to make blood or nerve or any other cell type. So we had never been so close to satellite cells as skeletal muscle stem cells, and we used obviously these properties to and this possibility to isolate so many cells and so easily from this packed with GFP mice to be able to do the transcriptome, so microanalysis of this cell. And that is very interesting because that permits to perform the comparison between quiescent and activated state. Nobody knows exactly what happens to this cell under the quiescent state and how quiescence is maintained and regulated in adult muscle, how these cells say persist as stem cells in this muscle. So we isolated the cells from resting adult muscle, regenerating muscles of adult embryo mice, and also growing muscles. These were the two activated states that we used to compare to the quiescent one in vivo. And this led us to many observations. I'm just illustrating one of them, and at the beginning of several studies that are continuing now. One has to do with the matrix, say, or the metalloproteases and the inhibitors that the cells are expressing. And we found that the quiescent state, which is illustrated by the AB lines here, the quiescent state is characterized by the expression of a high level of inhibitors of metalloproteases, and which is in red. So the red means higher than blue, blue means low, red means high. So the redder the higher the expression. And the situation upon activation was the reverse, with inhibitors going down, expression of inhibitors of metalloproteases going down, and inhibitors of metalloproteases going up. And many of them are involved in the control of, say, remodeling of the matrix and availability of and transmission of signals, because this involves the interaction between receptors and matrix and laminin and integrins and all these proteins that are at the periphery of the cells in the environment of the cell. And when we use inhibitors of these metalloproteases, and we looked at the capacity of the satellite cells to contribute to muscle regeneration, we found, and this was performed in vivo, we found that this capacity was seriously impaired. This is illustrated here by the expression of myosin that is occurring at much lower level when mice were treated with the AM for an inhibitor of metalloproteases. So that is, if you affect these two steps, I mean, the treatment of muscle with the muscle metalloprotease inhibitor will affect not only probably the capacity of satellite cells to undergo activation, but also differentiation. So that is very important observation. So this is part of the conclusion I just made, and I would like to reach this point where we are trying to give an overview of what could be when you will see this notion, I guess. How much time do I have left? Sorry? 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes left. So I've not reached the 45. Or I have... No. Okay, thank you. No, I was worried about the time. So this gives some kind of an overview of what could be the niche of the satellite cells. The players are the fibers, okay, as we know now. The satellite cell itself, and the satellite cells from the transcriptome analysis we did, and from the studies of many of the labs, because this is not just from the last studies we did, that information has come obviously. But still, there are a few insights into this function and role of protein. So the fiber, the satellite cell, the matrix basal lamina that is all around, and also connective tissue cells, you know. People like to call them interstitial because the satellite cell is always present in between the basal lamina and the fibers. And there is almost no other cell type in this area. So when one sees a cell in this area with the lamina on top and the fiber under, this is a stem cell. That could be a sufficient definition to characterize a stem cell, although there are other features that can be used. And one sees that there is a very important couple of say, membrane protein that is acting, and that has been shown very recently. It is the Notch receptor and its ligand, delta. Delta is brought to the Notch. Notch is carried by the satellite cell, and delta is brought by the fiber. And it was shown very recently that breaking the Notch pathway, Notch signaling pathway, this is a very important pathway that is involved in many processes, many different processes at different stages, and then I'm not going to go through, but Notch is controlling survival in a given tissue, proliferation in another, and in this case, it's going to be quiescent. You break the signaling going through Notch delta, and the satellite cell is going to wake up. And when it wakes up, it differentiates, and disappears. And the renewal is affected. And it was shown recently that breaking this was going to lead to the activation of the satellite cells, their differentiation, and the loss. So if you let the mice that are missing this signaling pathway now go for a few months, and that you come and injure their muscles after a few months, after this mutation has been induced, the capacity to regenerate of this muscle missing the Notch delta signaling completely lost. Other experiments have been performed also that were directly concerning the satellite cell itself, and satellite cells were directly targeted with the toxin and leading to the loss of the satellite cells in a particular muscle after injection of this toxin, because the cells were carrying this, engineered to carry the receptor for the toxin. And then assays for regeneration were performed, and in absence of this cell, regeneration was also compromised. So it appears that there is no cell type than satellite cells to perform or contribute to muscle regeneration. So that we begin to know more and more about this cell type, and I just wanted to illustrate another aspect of our work, and also that concerns the quiescence again, because I find quiescence very interesting. How could cells remain all along the life without dividing, but also keep their capacity to reactivate very rapidly and amplify and redifferentiate. And one piece of information that we got on this came from the study of the MID5 transcript that I mentioned before. We have obtained evidence that in quiescent cells, the MID5 gene is transcribed. So most of the time when a gene is transcribed, the protein is made. And you would expect that MID5 protein would be present in the quiescent cell that one sees along the fibers. But it turned out not to be the case. So the transcript is mostly present when the cells are quiescent, but the protein is absent from these quiescent cells. But then the protein becomes present when cells undergo activation, and that is shown here with an antibody against MID5, absent from the quiescent cells, present in the activated one. And I'm going to go very quickly, but I'm just going to give you a summary of the study. And we found that, because we find this situation very intriguing. First of all, there was a postdoc in the lab, Colin Christ, who is still very interested in microRNA. So he was always looking for microRNA that could target genes like PAX genes and MRF genes. And he found miR31 as targeting MID5. So he began to study this interaction MID5 miR31 in the system of satellite cells. And to make a long story short, he found that, in fact, miR31 microRNA is targeting MID5 in the quiescent cells, and that is where expression of MID5 is, of miR31 is the highest. And very interestingly too, and this is why I'm showing this picture here, that this MID5 mRNA in the quiescent satellite cells that is illustrated here is present in granules, which are storage granules, where actually it appears that the MID5 mRNA would be captured and presented to the translation system because present in this granule, and this say sequestration would be favored by the association with the miR31. And when satellite cells undergo activation, very rapidly MID5 protein goes up, and because therefore the mRNA becomes available, and miR31 goes down, the granules disappear, and activation can occur. And so when I see something like this, that reminds me of this maternal messenger RNA that are present in early embryos, where there is no need to go to transcription to get some information, but the cells will retain with themselves without needing further transcription. They will retain some critical messages, but they will not use them, because if they use them, they undergo activation and differentiate, so they're no longer quiescent and no longer stem cells, and they were differentiating cells. So there is some kind of very interesting, I find, situation here provided by this MID5 miR31 interaction. So if I have 2 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 7 more minutes, 3 more minutes, okay, before questions, or okay, great. So I will go very fast, because there was a very provocative observation in the field that was made 2 years ago. That is, we know that MRF, myopia, and MID5 and so on genes are very important for the control of myogenesis. We also know that PAX7 and PAX3 are very important, and that they mark satellite cells, and that they're required for muscle development and also maintenance of satellite cells. And that was true in fetal myogenesis, neonatal myogenesis, but in adult myogenesis it was proposed that these genes were indispensable, and then it was inducible targeted knockout or invalidation of these genes that led to this type of conclusion. So the results are convincing, although not fully understood. But the question is open. So that is it is exactly the function of PAX3 and PAX7 in satellite cells. So this is something we are still working on, and we are particularly focusing on the PAX3 genes, and I will not develop on this expression on these studies. But we're trying to understand the contribution of PAX3 to the satellite cells using conditional invalidation of these genes. And back to our transcriptome analysis, we were interested in another family of transcription factors that I mentioned at the beginning. That is the PITX. And 2 members of this family are PITX2 and PITX3. And we decided, because of their pattern of expression and because of the information that was available on them, to perform conditional invalidation of these genes, particularly in the myogenic lineage. It's important to do so because these genes are also expressed in different tissues, not strictly in the muscle tissue. Therefore, if you invalidate a gene everywhere in the organism, and then you come and argue that the phenotype you're going to get is due to the invalidation in muscle, the first reviewer will come and tell you, well, why don't you use targeted invalidation, because you cannot argue firmly that what you're looking at is what you are just looking occurring in the muscle tissue. So we did another argument for the interest in PITX genes. And as you see, the pathways, transcriptional regulatory pathway leading to myogenesis are becoming a little more, rich with more factors. We had the MRS, and the PITX genes are of interest because actually they seem to occupy in this pathway an intermediate position. They are downstream of the PAX genes, at least in trunk muscles and limb muscle development. They are downstream of PAX genes, but upstream of MRS genes, like myotic in this case. And very interesting situation in the head. The head muscles have a different origin than the trunk and limb muscles. And the PITX2 gene is occupying the place or the position of PAX3 in these muscles. So we reasoned that maybe if the PAX7 genes were not absolutely required for adult myogenesis, maybe the PITX genes were going to relay the action of PAX genes in the adult. This is probably a completely, not completely, this is a wrong hypothesis, but that was the one we had when we started this study. And I'm just going, because of the time, I'm just going to summarize our observations which are going on. Nothing's published yet. And that is, we looked at the mutant PITX2 mutant, and we detected proliferation and motility defect. That is important for a satellite cell. Proliferation is important because cells have to occupy very rapidly for muscle regeneration, and motility also because they have to reach the site of injury. And this is illustrated on this. We also found that many of the cells that were missing PITX2 and 3 were undergoing senescence. That is bad news because when you need a good number of cells to execute a regeneration program, you don't want them to undergo senescence. And when we looked at the capacity to differentiate, we also found a marked deficit in the capacity of PITX2 deficient satellite cells to undergo differentiation. So clearly this seems to be quite important. And we went back, this were all the data I just presented about PITX were from, say, ex vivo observation, which means tissue culture observation. So we also injured the muscles of PITX2 and 3 deficient mice. And what we found that these mice were displaying, this is ongoing regeneration after injury, 12 days after injury. And in all the mice we've been studying, we find that there is a marked deficit in the capacity of mutant muscles to undergo regeneration after injury. And we also use again the mouse model that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the MDX mice. Those mice which are missing dystrophin being absolutely required for the stability of fibers. And these mice undergo constant degeneration and regeneration. And we moved or introduced the PITX2-3 deficiency in these mice. And what we found is that there is a severe muscle phenotype that is occurring. And when one compares here the control and here the mutant, and this is, say, 14 weeks or so, or 10, 12 weeks after tamoxifen induction and invalidation of the PITX2 and PITX3 genes. And when looked at the situation in the muscle after 3 or 4 weeks or more, months, and one sees that there is a marked deficit in the size of the mutant muscle. This is diaphragm of mutant compared to diaphragm of control in adults. mice after implantation. And not very rapidly, but many weeks after, these are 18 weeks after injection of the tamoxifen, the survival of the mice is severely affected, and most of the mice which are MDX mice which are deficient in PITX2 and 3 will die with marked muscle deficit, and there is clearly a function, essential function for these two genes in the satellite cell compartment in the adult. We don't know yet, and we don't think that this is strictly relaying the XB of the 5 genes, but this is definitely critical function. So, just to provide a quick summary of what we did, we have here, the 5 genes and the MRF genes that I mentioned. The facts are important for satellite cell specification, as I discussed. C5 myodid for their differentiation, and myosin for the formation of muscle and activation of muscle genes, and as you see right here. And apparently the PITX genes come in the picture, but their invalidation at this stage does not seem to be critical, because we have never seen that the transition from quiescence to activation was affected in absence of PITX genes. But what we've seen is severely affected is the proliferation and differentiation capacity of these muscle progenitor cells. So obviously we are digging more in this direction to be able to provide a more, say, comprehensive view of the function of this PITX in relation to PITX gene in relation to the PAX and the myodid genes in the satellite cells. We're also studying, this is going on and can almost finish, studying the PITX mutant, single PITX mutant. And we're also performing the transcriptome analysis because we would like to know exactly what is the function of these genes. Why do cells undergo senescence? Why is proliferation affected? Why is differentiation compromised? Several genes must be missing or altered in this PITX deficient satellite cell. So all these things are going on, and I just would like to mention some people in the lab. The lab was originally headed by Margaret Buckingham. She created the unit of molecular genetics of development at the Institut Pasteur, and she's now emeritus professor at the Institut Pasteur. It's been 2 years now, and I've taken over and work. And so I would like to mention, very important contribution of this person to our work, anyway, and also the work that was occurring before. Just mention more particularly the work of Aurore Honoré with the PITX gene, Georgia Palafakina. All these people are postdocs, Aurore and Georgia. Georgia Palafakina with the transcriptome analysis of satellite cells. Frédéric Rollet has now his own group, but he was at the origin of the Pax3 TFP studies and all the developmental studies. Pierre-Henri Commet is a very important person in our work because he's always present when we need to pack cells. And this is very important. And we need to purify cells by flow cytometry almost every 2 or 3 days. Therefore, his contribution is essential. Mounia Lagarde is also was with Frédéric involved in the development of studies and the role of PAX3 in the embryo. And Jacques Huon was the former boss of Aurore Honoré, who's working in Montreal, and he was at the origin of the discovery of the PITX. So again, I would like to thank you very much. I hope I did do 3 hours. you some kind of an overview of the tissue-specific stem cell. And if you wish, I would with pleasure answer questions.
Planted in your name in the cemeteries forest.
Could I speak again? Well, thank you very much. So, just one word, I don't know if it is just one thing to say. I told several people, Jarmo was at the Pasteur Institute last summer, that is where I met her, and she was doing a short internship with Benoit. Last summer? That was last summer. Yeah, that was last summer. No, there was somebody. What did I say? And well, so that's some kind of a connection. The first time I came to Istanbul was 7 years ago. I was invited by the Academy of Sciences for a meeting on stem cells. So again, and I was very pleased. I mean, I was a big surprise and big discovery from this beautiful city that you have. And I have another connection with Turkey that I just would like to mention to you all. This is that my mother was born in Izmir and grew up in Izmir years ago. So that was, you don't have to know that she was born in 1916 and left Izmir in 1920. So that was some part of her life. Well, thank you for your attention.